All right, good evening. Thank you. That's a loud welcome. Thank you very much. Yes, I've been here in Chennai for about 12 days now, 11 days, and I can assure you I feel very much at home. I also must say that even though I'm Sri Lankan, I have a son-in-law who is a Tambram. So we are very happy that we are part of your lot, right? So why did I say defensible decisions? Because any decision you make, you have to defend, at least to your spouse, if not for corporates, right? And in addition to that, I'm going to talk about two concepts called, am I in the way? I'm sorry. Why don't you sit over there? Maybe that's better, yeah. In addition to which, I'm going to talk to you about something called decision validation and decision zone mapping. The stuff that we're going to talk are quite revolutionary, so please pay attention because in the interest of time, I cannot stop. I'd love to if they'll allow me to, but I think you guys have a control on time. Cell phones off, please. I don't need to say that, but you probably know, but if you've forgotten it, please do that. So how many of you would give your car to a mechanic who is not trained? Anybody with the hands up? Probably not, right? Anyone will go to a dentist who is not trained? Almost certainly not, right? But the question is, why not? The reason is he'll screw up your mouth and your car both, right? Yes or no? And then, would you also say a trained person might do better? Come on, get responsive. Awesome. In that case, what about untrained decision makers? Are they not likely to fall flat on their face one of these days? Probably they will, right? So let me start by explaining to you about decision making and problem solving, because people have lost sight of that a little bit. Problem solving starts with a symptom. So let's say you have a son or a grandson who's got a swollen foot. When he runs, every time it swells up. So you see the symptom, you go to the doctor who identifies it to be a problem with the arch or the shape of the foot. So you say, Doc, what can I do? Then he says, well, you can bandage it, put it on ice, wear special shoes, or some surgical intervention. He's given you some options. Now you think deep and then you say, okay, we'll give it a shot, we'll wear special shoes. Then your spouse is going to ask, well, why did you do it? So you've got to validate that decision. I'll teach you in a short while. And finally, you must wear the shoe, which is the implementation. So ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, there are 6 steps to the problem-solving process and decision-making process. We are only going to talk on 4 and 5. Why? Because problem-solving is not decision-making. Problem-solving is unique to the problem, to the domain expert. The mason knows his work. You can't teach the mason what the problems are. The same with the banker, same with the IT guy. They are domain experts, they know their business. But decision making is unique to the person. It's about the person who makes the decision. And to better illustrate this, let me say something, touch wood, nothing happens, but this evening when you go home, the red light in your car comes up and says service engine. And you say, oh no. So you, first thing in the morning, you go to Jim, your mechanic, and say, hey Jim, what's the problem, man? I got a red light. Then he says, let's run the diagnostics and see what happens. So he runs it and he says, sir, you got a gear train problem. Oh Jim, what can I do? Well, he says, I can repair it. I can't promise the shelf life. I can put a reconditioned unit, a repaired unit. They're pretty good nowadays. They're warranted. Or if you have some extra money, we'll put a brand new unit. So while you mull over it, he says, sir, your car is knocking a few years. It's a bit old. Why don't you consider selling it? Let's ask ourselves who did what. Jim gave you solutions. He solved your problem. But Jim doesn't know that you have a daughter in college somewhere who could use this car for local running. Or your mother-in-law could use it in small town in India. Or that you spent a few million on your daughter's wedding. Does Jim know any of this? No. You must make the decision. What did Jim do? Solve your problem. And what are you going to do? Make a decision. In fact, the president of a company or a country does not solve problems. He or she makes decisions. Do we agree? Okay. Now, what about bad decisions? That's a serious problem. I want to take a minute to show you what's been happening.
UWA
So as you can see, bad decisions can have catastrophic consequences. So if companies like Kodak, Coca-Cola, and Yahoo, and Microsoft, if these guys can go under in millions, is it not likely that you too could also be exposed? Ladies and gentlemen, no one is immune today. In fact, in 2019, just last year, a startup called WeWork was valued at $49 billion, filed for bankruptcy. And a 94-year-old company, Dean Foods, the largest milk producer in the USA, also filed for bankruptcy. So it doesn't matter if you're a startup or you're a newcomer. You're at risk, and the decisions you make will have an impact. That is why Marshall Goldsmith, in his famous book, wrote, "What got you here won't get you there." To assume, and we with traditions, we tend to think, oh, we've come so far, we know what we've been doing, it's okay. It's not, ladies and gentlemen. And when it comes to decision making, there's another problem. We all like to think we are in control of our decisions. So I have a major problem unlearning you, because you don't realize that some of your decisions are in your DNA, and we're going to show it to you in a minute. Others shape the environment in which you are, and you don't even know it. And some others intentionally manipulate with your brain. So let me start by a comment from Deepak Chopra, one of your own.
Dr. Chopra comes at this as a doctor, as a scientist, and a very eloquent seeker, given us so much to think about, coming at it from a scientific basis and then moving into many more theories and thoughts.
We've been able to look at the brain. We've been able to look at gene expression. We've been able to look at cell markers of aging, telomerase, telomere length. We've been able to look at what are called inflammatory markers. In other words, everything that's happening in the body at a biological cell level. 23,000 genes, 3.3 million bacterial genes. Actually, your body is more bacteria than it is human cells, the microbiome. So we're looking at those genes, and then we're looking at what is called the epigenome, which is the shell of proteins outside the genome, and how these work together. And what we are finding is remarkable. You know, in the beginning, nobody would believe us, but now we have collaborations with Harvard, UCSF, UCSD, Scripps, with digital technology, with Duke University, with Mount Sinai. We can look at a blood sample, and we can tell you if you're experiencing samadhi occasionally or not, if your mind is quiet or not, if you're falling into the place where he
even whether our parents experience this.
Parents too. In fact, the epigenetics shows that your experiences now, which are not in your brain, by the way. Everybody says, my experience is in my brain. It's not in your brain. Your experiences are not in your body. Your experiences are in a non-local consciousness, which is not in space-time. In Hawaii, they have these temples and cow farms. If a cow has been zapped electrically, the next generation of cows will not go to the fence. They already know it's electrical, and they might get shocked. Okay? Then the following generation. Now, people have done experiments right here where you take mice and you have them smell wintergreen, which is a very pleasant smell. Then they get mild electrical shocks. The next 7 generations of mice will be scared by smelling wintergreen. Where is the seat of this personality? Where is it coming from? This is why science opens the window to what people already knew, actually, in our tradition.
So you can see that for 7 generations, mice who have never seen wintergreen is scared of wintergreen. Where is it coming from? There's a lot of studies going on, but what is clear is that your experience is not in your brain. It's in your DNA. It's coming down through the pipeline. Now, let me talk to you a thing called persuasion, not persuasion. How we can make you decide the way we want you to decide, and you don't even know it. So let me touch on that. Oops, sorry.
Persuasion. Persuasion is the practice of getting people sympathetic to your message before they experience it. It is what you say immediately before you deliver your message that leverages your success tremendously.
There's this interesting study. A guy goes to a shopping mall in France, and he tries to get women's phone numbers as they pass various shops so he could call for a date. One of them is a shoe store, and another was a bakery. But in neither of those cases was he very successful. He only got a number 13% of the time. But there was one kind of shop that doubled his success rate when women were passing it, a flower shop. Why? Because flowers put women in the mindset of romance.
Not consciously, persuasively. If we are paying attention to something important, that's how we decide to pay attention. But a communicator can reroute our attention to something that isn't important, but make it seem important.
So you can see in this experiment that was done in a Paris mall, when this young man was asking the girls for dates, he stood in front of a shoe store, his success rate was only 13%. He goes to a bakery, still 13%. He goes and stands in front of a flower shop, 26% success rate. And a guy at the other end of the mall was asking these girls, did you give your phone number to the guy? If they said yes, would ask, do you recall where he was standing? No idea. It was internal. It's in the subconscious mind that was happening. And that's what's worrying us with decision making. Now see what about websites?
Now marketers, some of them, have studied persuasion's potency. One online furniture store tested images of fluffy clouds versus cold hard cash on its homepage.
Those who saw the background depiction of clouds searched the site for more comfortable furniture. Those who went to the site that had money in the background became cost conscious and preferred to purchase less expensive furniture. Almost no one recognizes that the clouds or the coins had any impact on their behavior.
So now think about it. All of you who have businesses of one type or another, how do you have your websites developed? You find a nice web designer, you tell him about your colors and your theme and your products, and you hope for the best that artistic guy will produce something. Does he know anything about this stuff? How to get people to go exactly where they want to go? Psychology plays a big role. So next time, go back and review your websites and ask yourself, is the message loud and clear? Is this what we really need? Now, what about messing with your head? This is an experiment conducted at Yale University. What they do is, just to give you a lead up, they get student volunteers to come and interview a professor and decide if they would give them a full-time job or not, if they would hire or not. In the first case, they get the students to hold a hot cup of coffee for a few seconds. Another group is asked to hold a cold cup of Pepsi Cola and see what happens.
What we do in our experiment, we very briefly expose people to a warm or cold substance. And what we expect to happen is that that simple experience with a warm substance or a cold substance will prime people to sort of activate these feelings of warmth and comfort and the things that we've learned about since we were very young.
Volunteers for the experiment are asked to hold a warm cup of coffee as they are met by Lawrence. They have been primed with heat. The purpose of the experiment is to record participants' judgments about Lawrence's colleague, Randy.
How was your break?
It was awesome.
It was good until I got stranded in Florida.
What happened?
Because of the snowstorm in New York on Friday, so I got stranded.
Cup. And here's the killer question. Would you give Randy a permanent job?
Based on your brief interaction with Randy, or would you hire him as project manager?
He seemed like a generally friendly guy. So yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, why not?
Sure. Yes. Yes.
Saying warm and friendly things about a stranger might just be the normal polite response. Time to cool things down. Except for the temperature of the drink. Identical conditions. The same conversation with Randy.
How was your break? You glad to be back?
Not really.
And 6 minutes later, the same questions from Lawrence.
Based on your brief interaction with him, would you recommend him or would you hire Randy as project manager?
As a leader, I'm not sure. Based on the brief interaction? No.
Maybe not from the impression that I got.
The experiment shows, remarkably, that a brief encounter with a beverage could see you either hired or fired. It's a powerful effect, and one that might have worrying applications.
In the case of, say, consumer products, feeling warm about a product presumably will make you more likely to buy it. Feeling warm about a spokesperson may make you be more likely to listen to that person and trust it.
So you can see now, something you never believed. Is it possible that touching something warm for a few seconds would change your appreciation of that person? Trust me, it happens. In fact, in California, when I go for a meeting, I subtly call the guy 10 minutes before and says, I'm passing by a Starbucks, can I get you a cup of coffee also, please? And I take the hot coffee for him. I give it to him. He holds it. Exact same results. So the recommendations are, at a business meeting, serve hot drinks instead of something cold, and if you're going on a date, order a hot soup instead of a cold salad, right? Some of us can't go on dates anymore, right? Let's look at intuition and logic. What is important to understand is intuition and logic cannot coexist. It's either intuitive or it's logical. And there are some serious consequences here. And we will see how we are going to play your brains out of this one.
Kahneman received the Nobel Prize for his work in the area of behavioral economics. Here he speaks of the two systems that we humans rely on to make decisions.
At the heart of human thinking, there's a conflict between logic and intuition that leads to mistakes.
You know, our mind is really two ways of operating. One is sort of fast thinking, an automatic, effortless mode there. Everything that you see and that you understand, you know, this is a tree, that's a helicopter, that's the Statue of Liberty, visual perception, all of this comes through system one.
The other mode is slow, deliberate, logical, and rational. This is system 2.
What's the best example of the two systems? There's really 2 plus 2 is on one side, and 17 times 24 is on the other.
What is 2 plus 2? 4. 4. And what's 2 plus 2? 4. 4.
It is automatic. It just happens to you. It's almost like a reflex.
And what's 22 times 17? Ooh, I can see that one.
But when we have to pay attention to a tricky problem, we engage slow but logical system 2.
Well, that involves work, it involves concentration.
And can I get you to just walk with me for a second?
System 2 may be clever, but it's also slow, limited, and lazy.
If you are expected to do something that demands a lot of effort, you will stop, even walking.
51. 16.
This pastry concerns this nice bottle of champagne I have here. Another thing, 2005, to give you a tenderly nice vintage bottle.
These people think they're about to use slow, sensible system 2 to make a rational decision about how much they would pay for a bottle of champagne. But what they don't know is that their decision will actually be taken totally without their knowledge by their hidden, fast autopilot, system 1. And with the help of a bag of ping pong balls, we can influence that decision.
I've got a set of number balls here from 1 to 100 in this bag. I'd like you to reach in and draw one out at random for me, if you would.
First, they've got to choose a ball.
Number says 10. 10. 10. 10.
They think it's a random number, but in fact it's rigged. All the balls are marked with the low number 10.
What we do is purposefully we give people a first decision that is clearly meaningless.
10. 10. Okay. Would you be willing to pay £10 for this nice bottle of vintage champagne?
I would, yes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
This first decision is meaningless based as it is on a seemingly random number. But what it does do is lodge the low number 10 in their heads. Now to the real question, where we ask them how much they'd actually pay for the champagne.
What's the maximum amount you think you'd be willing to pay?
20?
Okay. £7. £7, okay.
Probably £10. A range of fairly low offers. But what happens if we prime people with a much higher number, 65 instead of 10?
What did that one say? 65, okay. Okay, it says 65.
How will this affect the price people are prepared to pay?
What's the maximum you would be willing to pay for this bottle of champagne?
40?
£45.
45, okay.
50.
40 quid, okay.
£50?
£50?
Yeah, I'll pay between 50 and 80 pounds.
Between 50 and 80?
Yeah.
Logic has gone out the window. The price people are prepared to pay is influenced by nothing more than a number written on a ping pong.
Think about that. And you think you decide on what price to pay? No, you don't decide. You have been impregnated with persuasion ideas. And when you were shown the number, it's just a ping pong ball, for heavens. And you're still deciding. This is the danger you live in. I'll test you now for a moment. Imagine you were coming through Dubai and you decided to buy a laptop for your son for $800, but you come home and he says, I don't want this laptop. So you put it a small advertisement and you sell it for $1,000. What's the profit? Come on, everyone. Awesome. Now, I'll give you a slightly different problem. A bat costs $1 more than a ball. A bat costs $1 more than a ball. A bat and a ball together cost $1.10. How much does a ball cost? Come on. You see, all of you, most of you said 10 cents. You see, you were supposed to use system 2, which is thoughtful, but you gravitated to system 1. Let's take a look at it. Bat minus a ball is $1. Bat plus a ball is $1.10. Divide that by 2, and a ball costs 5 cents. But you couldn't get it. Even after I told you, be careful. And this is a tiny, simple thing. We gravitate to system 1 without thinking through the problem that you think is so easy. The one last video I'm going to show you on this stuff is called ghost options, and that's being used by banks, telephone companies, McDonald's, the whole lot. So you need to know this, because if not, you're going to fall for it.
The use of ghost options to influence your decision.
I'll give you a couple of more examples of irrational decision making. Imagine I give you a choice. Do you want to go for a weekend to Rome, all expenses paid, hotel, transportation, food, breakfast, the continental breakfast, everything, or a weekend in Paris? Now, weekend in Paris, weekend in Rome, these are different things. They have different food, different culture, different art. Now imagine I added a choice to the set. Imagine I said a weekend in Rome, a weekend in Paris. What if it was a trip to Rome, all expenses paid, transportation, breakfast, but doesn't include coffee in the morning? If you want coffee, you have to pay for it yourself. It's €2.50. Now, in some ways, given that you can have Rome with coffee, why would you possibly want Rome without coffee? It's an inferior option. But guess what happened? The moment you add Rome without coffee, Rome with coffee become more popular and people choose it. The fact that you have Rome without coffee makes Rome with coffee look superior, and not just to Rome without coffee, even superior to Paris.
Let me tell you, in a personal life, exactly the same thing. Let's say you're thinking of going to Singapore, or Bangkok, or Malaysia on a holiday with the family for a week. You go on the internet and you look for hotels. And you see, okay, there are several hotels for $100, you know, but there's one hotel that says $110, but includes free Wi-Fi and free breakfast. Which one do you think you're going for? Like lightning. That's exactly Rome with coffee. You even forget all the other stuff. Your mind just goes right through it. So this is what is called a ghost option. Okay, watch.
Here are two examples of this principle. This was an ad from The Economist a few years ago that gave us three choices. An online subscription for $59, a print subscription for $125, or you could get both for 125. I took this and I gave it to 100 MIT students. I said, what would you choose? And these are the market share. Most people wanted the combo deal. Thankfully, nobody wanted the dominated option. But now, if you have an option that nobody wants, you would take it off, right? So I printed another version of this when I eliminated the middle option, and I gave it to another 100 students. Here's what happens. Now the most popular option became the least popular, and the least popular became the most popular. What was happening is that option that was useless in the middle was useless in the sense that nobody wanted it. But it wasn't useless in the sense that it helped people figure out what they wanted. In fact, relative to the option in the middle, which was only the print for 125, the print and web for 125 looked like a fantastic deal. And as a consequence, people chose it. The general idea here, by the way, is that we actually don't know our preferences that well. And because we don't know our preferences that well, we're susceptible to all of these influences from the external.
So that's the catch. Most of us don't know what we really want. So we are susceptible to the external influence. So marketers know exactly what to do. For example, some of you maybe in my profile it didn't say that, but I used to run 2 big liquor stores in Houston, Texas. But I don't drink liquor, nor do I serve liquor in my house, but I knew all about liquor. And what do? We charge the salesmen, the suppliers, a premium to put their bottle on the eye level shelf. We have 5 shelves, there's 1 eye level. If he wants to occupy that, he's got to pay me extra. Why? Everybody likes the eye level. They don't want to look up and down. The next thing, if Johnny Walker whiskey is the biggest seller, the newcomer fellow, I tell him, I'll put you to the right of Johnny Walker, but you pay me a premium. Why? 80% of the people are right-handed. So they look at Johnny Walker and he's so expensive, the hand goes there. Are you making the decision? No, I made it for you and you don't even know it. I placed it because I know what you're going to do. So this is the danger, that we think we know what we're doing and we don't know. In fact, McDonald's, here's a menu from McDonald's fries. In large numbers, that's it is. Small is $1.39 for 74 grams. So what happens if you divide that by 2? That means you get 37 grams for 70 cents. But if you move from medium to large, you can get 35 grams for just 10 cents. McDonald's places that medium, which is a ghost option, knowing that we can move it. So if you're selling products, go back and review your pricing structure now. We'll tell you about it. Walmart has done it. In fact, you go to a bank and study the fixed deposit interest rates, time and amounts, you'll find there are many ghost options placed in there to drive you to invest more money for a longer term. This is well known. And there are so many unconscious biases. I don't have time to talk outside. We'll talk about all of this. Just look at the last one. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very simple to explain. If today you have a cough and a temperature and you go to the doctor, what is he going to test you for? Recency bias. The doctor is biased. He's saying anything that comes my way, possibility is a coronavirus. See, I showed you many, many things now. We can summarize all of this down the road. But what can you do about it? It's not enough to tell you there's a problem. How do I remedy it? Decision making is part art and part science. The art part is your feelings. Without your feelings, there are no decisions. We own software products. They are all feelings driven. And there is uncertainty in the stuff. So the way we start is, we start with an objective. I want to buy a car. So I find 5 cars that I like, and somehow I guess, pray, whatever it is, and I decide. In future, ladies and gentlemen, always identify criteria. Criteria are factors that drive your decision. So you have what is called C&C, criteria and candidates. Now we need a process, and we're going to teach you that. You make the decision. Now, as a decision maker, there are 3 important things for you to do, and absolutely important. Number 1, identify your wants and needs, your criteria. If I'm going to get married, let's say I'm 27 years old, I might have criteria like a big dowry, education, good-looking girl, shapely figure, whatever it is. These are my criteria. You buy a car, it could be status, price, resale value, maintenance cost, all of that. Do you agree now everything must have criteria? You buy a house, it could be price, resale value, distance to work, crime, pollution areas, all that, yeah? Come on. Now you go and find those cars or those houses that are important to you. They are called candidates. If you're hiring, it's the same story. Now the difficult one is how to interpret the data with your feelings. We'll show you in a minute. As you search for the optimum decision, ladies and gentlemen, there is a component called the quality of the decision that is driven by what you see on the screen. And there is also the implementation. The quality and the implementation together form the outcome. And here's something I'm about to say. You're going to disagree with me first time, but think through, then you'll agree. Don't judge the quality of your decision by the outcome. I'm sure some of you are like, what are you talking about? Because all our life, we judge things by the outcome. But read that word that I have underlined. Not the decision I said. I said, don't judge the quality of the decision by the outcome, because you can have a high quality decision that is implemented terribly. So how can you blame the decision? We have to break down and analyze it, okay? All right. I'm going to talk to you about a multi-criteria decision. First type of decisions. You just won the green card lottery and you're planning to move with your family to a place in the USA. You come to me and say, Dr. Errol, can you help us, please? We have nobody in the USA that we know. Can you help us? I said, sure, I'll help you, no problem. I said, let's start with some criteria. Remember, I told you, any decision starts with criteria. I said, do you want to live in a hot place or a cold place? Can you afford expensive housing? Are you concerned about crime? Are you concerned about pollution? Do you like to live close to other Indian families? Or maybe your father needs a little medical attention, so is it important by a hospital? Are these fair criteria? Huh? There could be others, but these are fair. Now I go in and find 7 cities in the USA. These are real cities with data that are factual data. And the cities are, I have to change the names for Americans, I don't want them to know, but it's Atlanta, Raleigh, Phoenix, Jacksonville, Seattle, Orlando, and El Paso. These are real cities. Now I'm going to ask you, sir, I've given you all the data, please make the decision. I said, oh, so doctor, it's too much information. Imagine in a corporate setting, you're doing some vendor evaluation, and I give you this data and you're going to tell your boss, sir, I can't reach a decision because I got too much information. He's going to say, what? You can say I don't have enough information. That's okay, but you can't tell. This is the same whether you're selecting a supplier, hiring an employee, locating a branch office, procurement. The same multi-criteria theory applies. And there's a methodology. We developed a 7-step methodology that takes you through step by step, and I can guarantee you the process is solid gold, but the assumptions are that's your responsibility. Clearly define your objective. This is where many people fail, by the way. Many people fail. I have enough examples. We do a module in our workshops just focusing on how to set the objective right. You identify relevant criteria. Often there's too many. So we do what is called a criteria segregation process. We identify available candidates. We get all the data and put it into a judgment table. We assign weights and we rank candidates. Now you will see the letters AHP next to steps 3, 6, and 7. That stands for analytic hierarchy process. It's a highly mathematical technique. You don't have to worry about it because we have software that we give you free. You can use it, no problems. Now, what is AHP? Just Google it. You can do it now or anytime. The last conference had 90 papers published. 19 countries participated. It's well established. It's been from about the 1960s that has been there. Here are some of the applications you see if you look online. Solid. Now I'm going to show you how it all operates in a little video.
The AHP technique. All decisions are based upon some form of comparison. We cannot look at this picture and say, this person is tall or short. But when we compare him to another person, we see that he is short. As you can see, all decisions are relative, not absolute. Imagine you're at an airport and you're watching the TV screen and two pictures are presented. And you've asked to distribute 100 points among these ladies. 60-40, 30-70, whatever it is. Difficult? Probably not. Now we're shown four pictures and again asked to distribute 100 points. Difficult? Probably a bit more. This time 7 pictures are presented. This time it requires much more effort. You're probably ready to give up. Let's get back to the pair. Would you say that the pair was easiest to handle? Obviously. Would you also agree that as the number of contestants increased, it became increasingly more difficult to make a reliable judgment? Let's take a look at a problem in the real world. Your manager wants to promote you, but wants you to find a replacement. So you start with a set of criteria. Here we have 37 criteria, and you are asked to select those that are applicable to your particular job. You might select 10, 15, whatever the number is. Now imagine 7 candidates are presented as. Now in the previous example where I presented pictures of 7 ladies, I only showed you the face. I did not show the body, the walk, the talk, the swimsuits, nothing. And even when you dealt with one single criterion, that of facial beauty, you had difficulty deciding between the 7 ladies. How do you think you would handle 10 or 15 criteria? Almost impossible. Additionally, there are multiple decision makers. How would you make a defensible decision? This is a 3D problem with multiple criteria, multiple candidates, and multiple decision makers. Most certainly beyond common sense decision making. Imagine you are selecting compressors and you are faced with 13 criteria and 7 candidates and 4 departments. This would be a nightmare for common sense decision making. Hopefully by now you are convinced that without a robust technique, you are likely to make some serious mistakes.
So, as you can see that the HP technique is highly mathematical, but you don't ever see it. The software drives it, and we're going to show you how it's done. So the first thing is, let me take a simple example. You're going to buy a house, and we're going to find 5 criteria. Did we agree that from now on you don't do any make decisions without criteria? Yes or no? Right. So I'm going to give you 5 criteria for your next house. Price, resale value, distance to work, crime, and pollution. Okay? Just 5. Yeah, could be more. What we do is we ask you to think of any 2. Remember the girls, the pictures? When I gave you all 7 girls, you said, I can't handle this, but give me 2, I'm okay. So what we do is we assume we only have 2 criteria, A and B. Price and resale value. Then I'm going to ask you, explain to me how important or how your preference for price over distance to work, for example, just 2. And you simply say they're equally important or weak or moderate or something. So you express it in terms of a comparative analysis. Now, to better explain this, let's say you come to my home for dinner. So after dinner we sit and talk and I say, hey, I got cake and fruit salad for you for dessert. Which one would you like more? So you say, hey doc, I love cake. Okay. Then I ask a second question. But how much more do you like cake over fruit salad? And look at the dominant scale. You look at it and say moderately. Ladies and gentlemen, even the most complex problem can be resolved with these 2 simple questions, which is which one, how much? Can I have you repeat that? Which one, how much? And I'm going to show you how that whole thing works. That is what HP has done. It has broken down the massive complex problems into something very, very simple. And watch how our software runs with those 2 questions.
Decision making using the analytic hierarchy process. Most of the decisions we make in the real world are multi-criteria in nature. Typical examples would be procurement, recruiting, local branch offices, etc. The best way to explain this is to consider a hotel chain hiring a business development manager. They identify 6 criteria and 4 candidates. Let us now look at the AHP software that we have developed. I have set up the recruiting problem, and when I hit continue, we have the criteria and the candidates that I have already inserted. We move on to the judgment table. The criteria judgment provides pairwise comparison. All you have to do is remember 2 simple questions. Which one? How much? So the first question is between availability and leadership. Which one is important to us? Availability. Then between availability and salary, you might say salary. You proceed with this, and when you finish, you simply say, okay, and you hit continue. Now you're presented the candidate judgment, which is identical with the previous case. On this occasion, you're offered one criteria with multiple candidates. Once again, we answer the two questions. Which one? How much? To say which candidate is more important than the other one and to what degree. We do this for each criterion. When you finish, press OK, and we are presented the criteria weights and the candidate rankings. Once we complete the evaluation, we generate a graph using the chart maker. We see that the optimal decision is Mary. Additionally, we have 6 bands. This is known as the N-1 evaluation. Here we have removed availability.
So let me explain this chart. This is a very important chart, and you've got to focus on it as I say. Once you run the software, automatically you generate this graph. And I don't know whether this little baby will have this. The last band at the end says the optimum selection is Mary. Very good. However, something interesting happens. And watch what I show you now. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bands representing the absence, not the criteria, but the absence of the criteria. What the software does is, and please follow me, this is very important, the sensitivity of your decision when you remove any one criterion. So, I'll come back to it in a minute after I said the next thing.
Remove leadership. And here we have removed salary, etc. And if salary is not an issue, Sue is a far better.
So, what it is, imagine you are going to hire this lady, Mary, and you go to your boss, and the boss says, hey, if I'm willing to pay any amount of money, is Mary your preferred candidate? I'm not sure. But with our graph, you look at it, and the band says, if salary is ignored, Sue is a much better candidate. So we are studying, and this is the key to it, that's what is called decision validation. We are studying the sensitivity of your decision to the assumptions you made. So if you're marrying a young girl for your daughter-in-law or something, and you started with education, dowry, all the stuff, and after you run your model, there's a band that says, if dowry is not important, who's the candidate? If beauty is not that important, there's another candidate. You can analyze. So for management, this is critical, because you start with some blind assumptions of what is good, and now you can look at the sensitivity of your decision to this stuff. That's the power of this.
Defensible decisions relying on common sense alone? Probably not.
So that's the chart maker. All these are free for you. Just leave your business card down with our people there, and we'll try to help you out. Now, a very specialized version of this is an extraordinarily valuable thing for procurement people. It's called the cost-benefit analysis, not the financial stuff. But what we do is, let's take this laptop. We're buying a laptop. So we have all the criteria, we have all the candidates, and we have all the data. So you keep looking at this day in and day out, trying to figure out, how am I going to do it? So, we run expertise without price, our model, and here is the table. The benefits are seen as the output, and here's the cost. We plot a graph, it comes automatically, and see what is showing there. It's showing that the Acer and the Dell have similar benefits, but there's a huge price difference. What the management does doesn't matter to me, but our job is to tell management that's what's out there. You decide if you want to spend the extra money for Dell for whatever reason, but otherwise you can go with the Acer. This is the cost-benefit analysis that shows exactly. So, as Mr. Srikanth was saying, we work with a company called Arriva, which is the largest nuclear power company in the world, manufacturing. Why do they use our software? Because there's documented proof. In case the government comes back and say, did you shortcut? Did you try to save money? Did you put the people at risk? No, sir, we ran an evaluation. Here it is. The engineers have gone 20 years, 30 years later. You need documented proof of what you're doing. Now, what we just saw was problems with multiple criteria. I hope you remember that. Now, let's look at problems with uncertainty. Very interesting, And I'll ask you a simple question and we'll just jump into it. Imagine you just got an offer from Indian Oil Corporation to supply some chemicals. It's only available in 3 countries in West Africa: Angola, Congo, and Liberia. Availability, price, everything is the same, but you must only buy from one country because you get volume discount. You ask the Indian embassies there and they say, don't touch those countries, they're hell. But you have no choice, you know you can pick up. What do you like to know more? Let's say you'd like to know if these things could happen. So, I'm going to tell you now, new data. Congo, there's a 25% chance of riots. Angola, there's a 30% chance of a coup. And Liberia, there's a 35% chance of a new government. Ladies and gentlemen, can you tell me where you will buy this stuff from now? Price, logistics, everything is equal. Just the event probability is different. With the highest probability of an incident happening? How do you assume that the new government will favor you? Could go the other way. Huh? But you have no choice. You have to buy from one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, good. So actually what you are indirectly telling me of something that most people miss. What I just showed you is what is called event probability, right? Now let me take a Madras situation. I don't know where we are, but I'm just going to assume that's the north and that's the south, just for purposes. And you, sir, you live on the south side. We just get an announcement saying there was a major terrorist explosion or something on the north side. All roads are blocked up. Everybody stay put. You're going south. Does it impact you? Huh? No. So what we want is not just the event probability, we want the impact probability. What is the likelihood this impacts us? So I'm going to give you some data now. So in the case of Congo, which was 25%, I'm going to say there's a 20% chance, zero loss, 30%, 50% chance I lose 30% of my contract, 30% chance I lose 40% of my contract. Just some numbers. Now I have predicted exactly how this is going to impact you. And I'm going to give you the data for the others also. Ladies and gentlemen, now you have 21 data points. Can you make a common sense? Oh, post too much information, please. I can't handle it. It's not it's too much information. You're not prepared to handle data in this big world now that we're playing field. And I will show you how it's done. But first, let me touch once again on what is called EP, event probability, and IP, impact probability. Let's take a car crash and a plane crash. So today, touch wood, nothing happens, but let's assume, is there a 10% chance that when you go home today, somebody will hit you from behind on the way? Yes or no? Yeah, right? Is there a 50% chance maybe your car gets damaged and maybe 20% chance you get injured? Just a number. Come on, guys. Good. What about a plane crash? The event probability is 0.00001. That's a very rare chance of, but what's the impact probability? Huh? So when you deal with uncertainties, you must focus on event probability and impact probability. You can't just handle it alone, right? So let me ask a simple question, that a job situation for you folks. You have currently a job, let's say, we don't have a company to call it, let's say Bharat Heavy Electrical or something or another. You have an existing job, you're paid $70,000. And your boss told, look, if you get promoted, you'll get $85,000. But the other department in the company likes you so much, he says, hey, forget that company, that division, come to mine, I'll pay you $75,000. And if the boss leaves and you get promoted, we go to $100,000. There's some uncertainty. How do you decide and how do you support that decision to your spouse to say, why did you take it or why did you not take it? You have to draw a logic diagram, right? I won't do much of it, but this is a logic diagram. And then we have to do what is called a zone mapping. But rather than do this, I will give you a very real problem that we did with a pharmaceutical company that is quite interesting. So please follow this carefully. This is a case of a pharmaceutical company having 3 possible projects, but they can only spend on one. and they're trying to figure out which one. And the uncertainties are everywhere. So pay attention, please.
Decisions with multiple uncertainties using decision trees and D-zone maps. J&J Pharmaceuticals are developing a new drug for the treatment of diabetes, thrombosis, and cholesterol. However, J&J can invest only in one of these projects. The cost of pursuing these products, for the preliminary test, we would spend $2.5 million, and for the FDA approval, there would be a cost of $500,000. The marketing department has arrived at potential revenues from these projects. Here too, there are some uncertainties. There's a potential for high revenue or low revenue. For example, for cholesterol, the high revenue would be $13 million, while the low would be $7 million. Uncertainties facing J&J now. Will the preliminary test be successful? Will the FDA approve the new drugs? Will sales generate the projected revenues? The question for J&J is which product? We can start with a 50-50 assumption for all uncertainties, and then study the impact of such assumptions on the final decision. Action plan. First, draw the DT sketch, then develop the Excel model, then plot the D-zone map, and finally study the uncertainties. Here we have the sketch for the decision tree. We have three options, and let's focus on thrombosis. If the preliminary tests are successful, then we proceed for FDA approval. And if FDA approval is granted, we proceed to market, and there is a potential for high revenue or low revenue. Similarly for the other two projects. Now to step 2, where we build the Excel decision tree, and in this case, it is for the preliminary tests. Once we complete the decision tree model, with one click, we can create the D-zone map. The model creates 3 zones for the 3 decisions: thrombosis, cholesterol, and diabetes. The zone in which the red pointer lands is the recommended decision. Here we have 3 axes. One is for diabetes, the next is for cholesterol, and up here is the thrombosis. When I change the probability of success, the decision is thrombosis. If I change the probability of thrombosis success to 70%, again the recommendation is for thrombosis. What is important to notice is the distance of the pointer from these demarcation lines tells you the degree of freedom you have with regard to your assumptions. In this case, when the probability of diabetes success drops below 46%, the decision should be for thrombosis. Zone map such as this gives you tremendous flexibility to understand the sensitivity of your assumptions to the final decision. We repeat.
So you see, ladies and gentlemen, that's the name of the game. Management wants to know, we assumed a 50% starting point. Probability of success, probability of failure, high revenue, low revenue. But after you build the model, you can slide the percentage scales and see at what point will your decision change. Again, it is telling you the sensitivity of your decision to the assumptions you made. That is decision validation. Sure, anyone can make a decision and live with the consequences, ladies and gentlemen. But it would be very difficult to defend such a decision in a corporate setting. That is why our thrust is all about analytical decision making and making better, defensible decisions. Because you must incorporate analytics to reinforce your common sense. I hope you're convinced. Thank you very much.